Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really pulling back the curtain on a celebrity divorce settlement it's got some surprises. We're looking at Nikki Garcia, you probably know her from WWE Total Bellas, and Artem Chigvintsev, the longtime pro dancer from Dancing with the Stars.
Exactly. And, from the outside looking in, we saw the smiles, the anniversary posts just days before things unraveled. But the legal documents, they tell a really different story, a much more complex one, especially concerning the finances.
Yeah, unexpected is definitely the word. What really caught my eye in the news reports, and we're mainly drawing from one detailing the court filings, is this. Nikki Garcia has been ordered to pay Artem Chigvintsev child support. That really flips the script, doesn't it, on what many people might assume. So, our mission today is to dig into the details of this settlement, understand the context around their split, and see what it tells us about their lives post-breakup. Okay, so let's start with the basics. The settlement itself, what are the key parts we need to know?
Right. So there are several main points. First off, support for their son, Mateo, who's 4 years old now. The agreement says Nikki pays Artem $3,500 per month. That's the child support figure.
$3,500 a month from Nikki to Artem.
Okay. And anything else regarding the child's expenses?
Yes, they also agreed to split the costs for any extracurricular activities Mateo does, so sports, lessons, that kind of thing. Equal split.
Got it. So there's the monthly payment plus the shared cost for activities. What about actually sharing time with Mateo? How does the custody arrangement work?
The plan they outlined divides up the major holidays. Nikki and Artem will alternate those each year. So, one gets Thanksgiving one year, the other gets it the next.
Okay. That sounds like a pretty standard way to handle holiday time in co-parenting situations. Trying to keep it fair.
It does seem standard in that respect. But that financial piece, like you said, Nikki paying Artem, it feels less typical, at least in the public eye, for celebrity splits. Were there other financial bits in the settlement? Yes. That's another interesting part. There are two pretty significant lump sum payments Nikki has to make to Artem. Each one is $100,000.
$100,000 twice.
Exactly. One payment is due pretty much now, and the second one needs to be paid before the end of this year. The settlement also mentioned that Nikki keeps ownership of her trusts.
So the child support, the split costs, and these two big lump sums. It does make you think, doesn't it? Given Nikki's public profile and career success, having her be the one paying suggests maybe a different internal financial picture than we assumed, or perhaps specific legal considerations during the negotiations.
That's a really good point. Those lump sums definitely add another layer. Now, this settlement came together pretty fast after they broke up, didn't it?
It really did. Finalized in November 2024, which was only about 2 months after the separation became public. That speed could mean they both wanted to resolve things quickly. But it's interesting, Nikki had spoken publicly around that time about how she was explaining it all to Mateo. She mentioned telling him it was just about them having our own homes.
Right, trying to phrase it gently for a young child. That makes sense. But this whole period, it wasn't just about the separation logistics, was it? There was that very serious incident involving Artem.
Yes, that's where things got very complicated in public. Artem was arrested.
Can you walk us through that? What actually happened?
Okay, so on August 29th, 2024, Artem was arrested up in Northern California. The charge was suspicion of felony domestic violence. And a felony charge, usually implies something more serious than a misdemeanor. The sheriff's office indicated that often involves a visible injury or a credible eyewitness.
And the initial call to 911 was a bit strange, wasn't it?
It was unusual, yeah. Reports said Artem himself called 911 first, asking for medical help after an argument. Apparently, shoes were thrown. But then, shortly after, he supposedly said help wasn't needed anymore. Despite that, the authorities still went out to do a welfare check, which is pretty standard procedure in potential domestic situations.
Right, they'd still need to check things out regardless of what he said later. So he was arrested and then released.
Yes, he posted bail $25,000 and was released later that same day. But this arrest had immediate consequences, especially for his career.
Yeah, the news came out pretty quickly that he wouldn't be back on Dancing with the Stars for season 33. That must have been a huge professional hit.
Oh, absolutely. A massive impact. Artem himself spoke about it later, saying he felt his reputation was, in his words, completely ruined. He mentioned how jarring it was to see his own mugshot on a magazine cover, and of course the financial loss from not being able to work.
That's rough. The personal fallout, the professional one, all before the legal side was even resolved. And it sounds like he started looking at a totally different career path after that.
He did. He reportedly started working in construction. He actually said it helped boost his confidence, gave him a new sense of purpose, a pretty big shift.
Definitely a major life change.
Yeah.
So while that dance career was effectively paused, he was building something new.
Hmm.
But what happened with the actual legal case from the arrest? That's key here.
That's the crucial part. On September 24th, 2024, the Napa County District Attorney's Office announced they wouldn't be filing any charges against Artem.
No charges filed. Why not?
They cited a lack of sufficient evidence to proceed with the case.
Wow. That must have been an enormous relief for him.
Huge, I imagine. He put out a statement saying he was incredibly relieved and grateful and felt the truth had prevailed. He said he just wanted to focus on being the best dad possible.
Which brings us back to Mateo and the custody arrangements. But there was also that restraining order, which signals things were pretty contentious, right? More than just negotiating schedules.
That's a really important element, yes. While Artem was publicly saying he hoped for equal co-parenting, Nikki's initial court filings told a different story. She actually requested sole legal and physical custody of Mateo right at the start, and she also obtained a restraining order against Artem.
And the grounds for that restraining order involved some very serious accusations from Nikki.
Extremely serious. Reports cited her legal declaration where she stated Artem had, and this is quoting the reports, tackled me multiple times and pinned me to the ground while our child was present. It's just a shocking contrast to those loving anniversary posts they'd shared literally days before his arrest.
It really is jarring. That timing is incredible. And Nikki's representative made a statement too, didn't they, trying to explain her actions?
Yes, her rep clarified that while Nikki didn't necessarily want Artem in jail, she felt he needed accountability, and that protecting herself and Mateo was the absolute priority. It really highlights how seriously she viewed the situation and the steps she felt were necessary.
It underlines the fear and the need for protection she must have felt. You also mentioned how others in their circle reacted.
Yeah, it's interesting. Cheryl Burke, another pro from Dancing with the Stars, considered Artem like family. She publicly said she was in complete shock. She even shared some resources related to domestic issues on her own podcast, just expressing hope everyone was okay. It shows how much this news rippled through their community.
It really does.
Yeah.
And just to recap their history quickly, they met back in 2017 on Dancing with the Stars, season 25. And like we mentioned, they had just celebrated their second wedding anniversary, posting these loving messages, song lyrics, all signifying their connection, just 3 days before Artem's arrest.
The timeline is just remarkable. It shows how fast things can apparently change, or perhaps how different the private reality was from the public image.
So when we put all these pieces together, the settlement, the arrest, the restraining order, the history, what are the main takeaways for you? What really stands out?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is definitely the financial settlement itself. Nikki Garcia paying Artem Chigvintsev $3,500 monthly child support, plus splitting extracurriculars, plus those $200,000 lump sums. That's significant and probably challenges a lot of assumptions people might have about financial arrangements in celebrity divorces.
Definitely challenges assumptions. And all of this playing out against the background of Artem's arrest for felony domestic violence, even though charges were ultimately dropped due to lack of evidence. Plus Nikki's initial bid for sole custody and obtaining that restraining order based on her very serious allegations.
Exactly. The whole sequence, the loving anniversary, the sudden arrest, the quick divorce process, the specific terms of the settlement alongside those severe allegations and the restraining order, it just paints a picture of a relationship that was clearly much more volatile and complex behind the scenes than what we saw publicly.
It really drives home that gap between the public persona, often so carefully managed, and the messy, difficult realities of private life, especially under the spotlight. So considering everything we've unpacked, the surprising finances, the serious allegations that didn't result in charges, the quick resolution, what's a final thought for our listeners to mull over after this deep dive?
I think it forces us to question the narratives we often build around celebrity couples and their splits. You see the headlines, maybe you make assumptions based on who seems more famous or successful. But this case, with Nikki paying Artem and the serious, though unproven in court, allegations swirling around, it really makes you think about the hidden dynamics. What are the realities of co-parenting when there's been this kind of conflict and accusation? How much do we really know based on public statements versus legal documents? It definitely challenges you to look beyond the surface story.